Hello and welcome back to Power Ranking. Sorry for the delay. We decided not to do it every week this season, and we're doing the mid-season Power Ranking. So we've just finished week 4 of the 8-week regular season. And with me, we have Miss Mag. Say hi, Miss Mag.
Hey guys, what's happening?
So anything you want to say before we start kind of going over stuff?
Sure. At the time of which the week zero power rankings did happen, where I was a part of that, I was actually not a coach in the VDL, and now I actually have been hired as a replacement coach in the S division at least. So that did actually being able to play a little bit of this format in draft got me to reevaluate some of the things I said during week zero. So look out for that.
Uh, and so with that, let's get into the rankings. So before we start, we're just going to start with this, which is just the overall rankings for each of the divisions. The top two divisions, Ruby and Sapphire, are with each other. So that means only top six or six people from those two divisions, and then six people from the Diamond and Pearl divisions can make playoffs. Currently, if you're in the tealish blue color, that means you're very likely to make playoffs at this current position, or if the reason if the regular season ended today, you would be in playoffs. Um, and overall, they're pretty firm, pretty close. There's a couple of teams that have yet to win. There's a couple teams that have yet to lose. Any thoughts about this before we get into our overall rankings?
I think at this point in the season, you've got a pretty good idea of which coaches have gotten into a bit of a rhythm with their teams, whether that be through from the very beginning, not making any trades, through after losing or even winning certain weeks and making trades. So, this is the time of the season where we really see like people pulling away from the pack.
Yeah, but as per usual, around this time of the regular season, every team currently has the ability to make playoffs, and no team has clinched playoffs as of this point. There's a couple teams that are really close to clinching playoffs, namely the 4-0 teams, but pretty much every team is guaranteed to still have a fighting chance to be in or out of playoffs. But with that, is there anything else before we move on to our first ranking or our 24th ranking?
Just to remind people that like these are again, our opinions that are, to be taken with as many grains of salt as you would like. Just because your team and record are not doing super well does not necessarily mean that you have a bad team or that you are a bad coach.
And so with that, let's get into number 24, the Trash Town Thieves. So I'll start off with them. They are the only team that's currently 0 and 4. There are two teams that are 0 and 3. They have yet to play their week 4, or maybe they just haven't been updated and they have been played. So that is one of the I think the big reasons they're a little bit lower. I personally would have put them. I put them a little higher than this, but any thoughts on this team specifically?
Yeah, I do remember during the week zero power rankings, this was one of those teams that I thought was going to suffer just from a lot of really nice offensive pieces, but like a tough bit with the synergy, and this team is just fundamentally pretty frail, with not really too many ways to offset that through like intimidate or even like prankster screens. And you know, judging by some of the matches, I think they have fought, in this really bulky kind of like bulky offense balance sort of, I guess format. It seems like those hyper offensive tools just needed a little extra push to kind of get there, and they're struggling to find their footing.
Yeah. Like I remember personally, I think I ranked the team pretty low in my week 0 power rankings. I think they ended up being around 18, so they weren't particularly low, but I definitely didn't like some of the things. Like I don't think the Murkrow Gold Dingo is the greatest composition. I know a lot of people really like it. I've not been the biggest fan of it. I think also Murkrow is not the best in draft, in my opinion. And then, there's a couple other pieces that seem like highly synergy focused. And when you have a highly synergy focused team, it can either be very powerful or it can be very like dependent. And I think it's definitely on that borderline. And, you know, maybe they need to, just kind of buckle down, get a little bit more clean play, or maybe they need to make a couple of trades. I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, I'll definitely agree with you on like the synergy piece. Some of these mons are very difficult to bring or justify bringing without certain other mons, which you may not want to bring because they don't look great into the matchup in general. Good example of this is like just the Titan will almost never benefit from Slush Rush because really the only Hail setter, or I guess sorry, we don't call it Hail anymore. Snow setter, I think the only snow setters are like Chili Reception, Slow King, and maybe Bruxus if it actually gets it.
Yeah,
Oh, and of course the Titan itself, but like the kind of defeats the purpose.
yeah, that's fair. But obviously, I think they have some some fight left in them. I'm excited to see what they do. Any other thoughts before we move on to number 23?
I think I'm pretty good.
So going to number 23, we have the Vancouver Titangs, who are 0-3 -4. So this is not the only 0-3 team. There's two. So any reasons why you thought this team might be in the lower of the two 0-3 teams, and maybe not as low as the 0-4 team?
I think this is still it's a better team than the 0-4 in terms of like overall composition, but it's still a little bit of a mishmash in certain ways, and I think that plus the record may have had people rank it a little bit lower. I don't actually remember where I rank this team myself. I actually ranked it a fair bit higher than most people did on the PR crew because I do like this team. I think it has very clean speed tiers. I think it has very clearly defined roles. I also think like Mousehold is just kind of insane in draft by its own token. I'm actually surprised to see a Mousehold team ranked this low, but there are some things like the double EVL8. Well, I guess technically triple EVL8 bonds, you know, um, Gastrodon's all right, but I don't think it like works super good on this team. There's like one Mon weak to water out of this whole team, and it's an NFE. So, you know, it's like
Mm.
little bits of like little like dings like that. I think have this team suffering a fair bit.
Well, yeah, I personally I don't. I think this is the better of the two 0-3 teams, and I actually believe we ended up tying. So it ended up being a really close between this and the other 0-3 team. Um, I think the big thing is, yeah, their A tier or whatever tier one core is incredibly powerful. They have Annihilate, Meowscarada, and Mousehold, all incredibly powerful draft league Pokemon and incredibly powerful, generically Pokemon. I definitely think their team is a little bit questionable once you get to some of the lower picks, even like you said, Gastrodon to a certain extent. Um, and they do have the better differential of the other 0-3 teams. So I definitely think they're a little bit better because I do like a lot of their key pieces. I think they are like one. Like I personally think their team could benefit from trade really notably. Like I think that one or two trades in this team would be really powerful. But right now it's kind of, like I said, they haven't made any trades, and like I said, I really like their top core. They just need a couple of like changes in some of their lower core, maybe like the Gastrodon, um, maybe like the Crabominal. They already have, and for like, some a little bit more interesting Pokemon. Their team could be really good. Like I think their team could do well with a maybe a little better fighter. I don't know which fire Pokemon are available, but that's the idea. Uh,
Yeah, no, honestly, that's well taken, and even just like you were saying, like certain like minor optimizations. Like for example, the Doxmon I feel like is in a weird spot on this team because nothing, to the best of my knowledge, gets Lava Plume. So you would be relying on like manually clicking fire moves into it to kind of get around its best gimmick. Now I do acknowledge that it also has Aurora Veil as its or not Aurora Veil, Aroma Veil as its other ability, which might make getting Trick Room up easier. But by that same token, like you have literally the best redirector in the format that's not named Indeedee. So, I mean, like like it's like small little stuff like that that like maybe that could be a different Pokemon. I will say though, I'm a little bit biased on one mod against this team because I have helped someone prep versus this team. I think the Crabominable is actually a really good mod on this team, and I never thought I would say that because I don't really like it at all in general. But after actually like playing with it, that mod's kind of crazy. It's like it's really strong, and if the other pieces around this team can really support a Trick Room heavy offense, that crab goes crazy under Trick Room. It's really, really frightening levels of damage.
Yeah, that's fair. Oh yes, and then okay. Guess we can continue up to number 22, which is the Alolan Araquanids at 03 minus 6. So I'm just going to start with this one. They are a little higher than the other 03 team. I think they should be a little bit lower for two main reasons. One, they're 03 minus 6, so a little bit lower differential. Two, okay, I'm going to say there's actually three main reasons. Two, this team was actually pretty low on our original power rankings, and wasn't a huge fan of them. I actually they ended up being their 22nd lowest team or 22nd team. So there's only two teams that we rank lower than them on their original team compositions. Um, and okay, I lied. Those are the two reasons. Also, I don't. There's a couple of Pokemon on the team I'm not a huge fan of, but that kind of just goes back to the original statement of I don't think the team is as good. It's again another team I think could that has some really powerful Pokemon. A couple of Pokemon changes would be nice. So any thoughts on this team?
Well, I'm curious to hear which Pokemon on this team you don't like, because I also have a few Pokemon on this team I don't particularly care for.
Um, well, so yeah, so I think the big thing is I'm not a huge fan of both Sableye and um, oh my gosh, Pachirisu on the same team. I think they kind of fill similar roles as being disruptive, annoying Pokemon that are pretty high tiered. And so using both an A tier and a B tier as like two entirely support focused mon, I'm not a huge fan of. Um, I'm not a huge fan of having both the two water Pokemon that are both fair. Like I think pretty much anything that what call it that
Floatzel.
yeah that Floatzel does Palafin does just as well, if not notably better. I think those are kind of the big ones, personally speaking, that I don't like on this team.
All right, that's fair. Because it brings me into sort of my main point, which is why I also rank this team fairly low. And like KJ is my boy. We've been doing draft leagues together for a while, but I had to kind of assess this on the merit of its comps and also like the record. But I do find there's just this issue with this role overlap. Like I'll give Sableye and Pachirisu a pass on the same team because at least Sableye offers Prankster and Fake Out in a different manner of disruption than Pachirisu just does with redirection. Because without Sableye, this team would actually have no Fake Out user, and in some cases, having at least a Fake Out user who in and of themselves is immune to Fake Out is actually pretty nice. But like in the same token, it's like the Pachirisu and the Scovillain, I feel like compete a fair bit. Even though, yeah, the Scovillain can be under Sun with Sableye, but like you'd be almost better off having Torkoal if you wanted to go that mode. But then having Torkoal would disrupt the Palafin a lot in some ways. Um, I also agree with Palafin and Floatzel not being there. I get that Floatzel's like Swift Swim, but I would almost prefer that be like Golduck or something because I don't feel like you need like an offensive Swift Swimmer in this team when you have literally Palafin. So that'd be kind of cool. At least Golduck offers a lot more utility and the potential to go like under a rain mode. The only other Pokemon on this team I don't really love is Wigglytuff. I kind of get why it's there. There's a lot of good Intimidate bait on this team, and even some Snarl bait, honestly. But I don't know. I feel like it could be like it's like I don't like the double normal type. Like I feel like Ursaring is the superior normal type on this team, and Wigglytuff kind of just is. It's not really doing too much there.
Triple normal
Where's the other normal type?
for Afrig.
Oh yes, I forgot about Farafrig being part normal. Yeah, well, I mean, but see, more to my point, Farafrig has a special side covered, like Hyper Voice, Psychics, all that jazz. Ursaring's got the physical side with the bulky Eviolite, the Guts combo. Like, it's just so much like Mons aren't really being allowed to shine because I feel like their roles are not super well defined. So I
Well,
would change out those three Mons
well,
if
yeah,
it was me.
and I think the other kind of slight issue is that it's not even just like the roles overlapping; it's roles overlapping with high tier Pokemon as well. So it's like that which kind of doubles up that issue. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but so like I said, I personally put them a little bit lower than this, but I think fairly unsurprising that the three winless teams are at the bottom three of our list. Um, so continuing on, we get up to our first team that has wins at number 21. We have the Alchemy. So what are your thoughts on the Alchemy at 1-3 -3?
I like Jackie. I was a big fan of Jackie drafting this team because the coach of this team, Jackie Luminary, as you might know her in other places in the VGC community. Like I've known her playstyle a little bit. This is kind of up her alley. She does like lean a little bit towards like the bulky offense balance stuff. I just don't think some of these choices are optimized for that role. Like, okay, here's what I love Skeledirge. The top row is great. Skeledirge, Hydreigon, and Rotom-O I think are fabulous. The sand mode I also think is fabulous. It's nice. It's reasonably cheap. I think like a B and a C tier. That's fine. Um, Pavilion, I'll give it a pass. It's a nice budget redirector. As well with Friend Guard. After that, I'm not super sold on the team, except for Espathra, because at least Espathra offers this team another secondary speed mode. But like Glalie, Phalanx, and even Orthworm, I'm not super keen on. I'll give Alomomola kind of a pass because A, it's a low tier, and I know you're going to need those kind of things. And in the low tier, it has a huge HP stat. So while it doesn't really do any damage, it does provide a good job of like damage mitigations and whatnot, and that kind of helps because a lot of her team, a good amount of her team is actually pretty bulky. But it's just like another case of like Mons kind of doing things that I'm not super sure of what they're gonna do. I mean, Glalie is at least nice for inner focus fake out, but I don't see Phalanx doing like shining super much here. This team's not like super weak to intimidate. Kind of the same with Earthworm. What are your thoughts?
Um, I think the big thing that I think kind of mentioned back at week 0 is their team has very little special defense. Their team, pretty much every Pokemon on their team, if you look at their bulk, they are either not bulky at all or they're explicitly physically bulky. And that's pretty much the only Pokemon that's not the case for is basically Rotom. Um, and so it's like that's definitely I think one of the big downsides to it. Um, Other than that, I do like a lot of parts of their team. I think it'd be pretty nice. They got some nice things going for them. They obviously one of the downsides of one downside of them in particular is I do think that they've had a pretty tough schedule thus far. However, they're kind of in a tough division, I think. um, and so they kind of got to deal with that. We shall see. But I think the big thing with their team, as you kind of see, is like they have the ability to kind of just run people over with sand mode, rock slide flinches. They got a Spothra, Hydreigon double up, or things like that. You get Tailwind redirection with Pavilion. You got a lot of ways to punish your opponents, but I think the downside of like kind of their very one-dimensional defensive side makes it very like high risk, and you can kind of very easily also get run down over by your opponent. And so it seems like a very high risk, high reward team. And so far, I guess the the risk has outweighed the reward thus far. But I wouldn't be surprised if they go on a little tear at the end of the season.
Yeah, neither would I, because this team, like you said, it has strong tools. I actually did not notice that thing about the sort of one dimensionality with their defensive stats. So good on you for bringing that up. I was just kind of looking at, sort of the Mons and roles as they were. But yeah, I think Jackie can finish off the season strong, and having a tough schedule can always be a factor in win loss rates by midseason.
Well, yeah, like I said, we shall see. Like I said, they have some good things with it, um, and like I said, they definitely have the ability to win games with just how powerful some of these Pokemon are. Redirection, very strong Pokemon. You know, you know, sand with rock slides and Dever stuff. Can do a lot of work with that. Any other thoughts before we move on?
No, I'll be curious to see how they finish the season. Let's go, Jackie.
Yeah, continuing on, we are at number 20, which is the Beantown Binacles. What are your thoughts on the Binacles?
Um, Not gonna lie, I haven't seen like all of Theo's games. I'm a little surprised this team is as low as it is, just because some of the pieces on this team are like just really like strong bonds, like Iron Valiant, Rule Edge, um, Rotom Wash, even Spiritomb for its tier, Jump Bluff, they're all like pretty solid mons, but I can see where there may be a little bit of issue with like some synergies. Like he's got like the hail mode, he's got a fairly decent trick room mode with the Camerupt and the Clodsire. Um, but again, I do see a lot of this team is also being kind of frail. Like Rotom and Spiritomb in particular have very high base defensive stats, but their base HP stats are almost non-existent. They're pretty low. Um, Iron Valiant hits like a truck, but it is also subsequently quite frail. That kind of stuff. He kind of has the impetus to mitigate that with screens, prankster screens, but I feel like he could easily be struggling to find his footing against a lot of like heavier out the gate offensive teams.
Yeah, I definitely can imagine that, or like like bulky offense teams. Definitely could be a little bit annoying. So for reference for anyone who's listening, we actually ranked the Beantown Binnacles fairly high in our week zero power rankings. I think we had them around 11. And so I personally like the team. I think on our initial reaction, we like the team for the most part. Um, Obviously they have massive damage output on their A tier Pokemon. They got the Hell mode, nice synergies there. They got a really good Trick Room setter and Spirit Tomb with a reasonable Trick Room mode and Camera Up. I think Camera Up is dramatically underranked for a tier 3. Like that thing in Trick Room, if Terrifier eruptions, that thing just destroys. I've done some prep matches with it, and I've been impressed every time I ran it. Um, so definitely some good things going for it. I definitely think a big downside to the team, like you kind of said, is if your opponents are able to outspeed you, you can get a little punished because you have some frail stuff. Some of these teams can, or some of the like benefits of their team can be easily like mitigated by, kind of certain things like for example, in prison trick room, can deal with the trick room mode, obviously, or things like that, or any setting up the sun or things like that. Um, I don't recall seeing too many of their matches myself, like the specific matches of what's happened with them. All I know, like they have not like they have had a couple of like O2s in the more recent ones. I think I'm trying to remember. I remember the game they won, which was against in which they had the Dunsparce just completely go off. I remember watching that one. So I don't know. Like I said, I don't think their team is as frail as we kind of 100%, but I definitely think that their team, I don't know, I think their team is good. I think that they could arguably be a little bit higher, but they haven't had a very you know convincing win. They only team they ended up winning is I think another 1-3 team. But,
Right.
so any other thoughts before we move on?
No, I think it'll be interesting to see where they place come end of regular season because I definitely think this team has potential. Maybe it could benefit from a few trades, but overall, I think the team has a very large amount of potential as far as like damage output is
Yeah.
concerned.
So with that, we get to number 19, which is the Pogging Porygons. So I guess start off, the Pogging Porygons are a replacement coach. They took up the team. So this is not quite the original team they had. So they have made a lot of changes from the original team. So the original coach was the Lily Cove Sharkpedos, and they actually were our 24th ranked team originally. However, they made a lot of changes to improve it. I think the original team had ended up having, some of the similar weaknesses you can see right now, which is they have 3 psychic Pokemon and 2 rock Pokemon. I think they even had more rock Pokemon on the original team and more psychic Pokemon. I think they actually had 4 psychic Pokemon and 3 rock Pokemon on the original team.
Yeah, no, they had four fire types and I think like three psychic types or something like
So,
that.
so I think the team has improved a little bit. They were able to get. I mean, the Pogging Porygons were able to get a win against one of the teams doing pretty well. So any thoughts on the Pogging Korrigans since they've taken over and their team.
Yeah, teams definitely come far in a way from the multiple overlapping type critique that I and others on the call gave it during week zero. And it's hilariously enough supplemented that away with Indeedee Armor Rouge, which is quite a fearsome pairing. um, just from playing regular VGC, but even in draft, like Ndidi is very much, I think, uncontested for being the best redirector in Scarlet and Violet because of the ability to set up psychic terrain and have one of the only three follow me's in the game. And then Armourouge just complements it by being like one of the only Pokemon that actually has expanding force in the entire game. So like it's a match made in heaven. So I like that he added this like prep mode that people have to respect in the size spam. I actually really like the Clawitzer add on this team as well, and even the Flapple. I don't think he has gravity anywhere, but I think Flapple is just a nice mon, can hit pretty hard, and it has like it's a nice little Firewater Grass Core with them up there being reasonably slow in some aspects, but also reasonably decently speed tiered for Tailwind, which he has priority with Gale Wings Fletchinder. And they just kind of rounded out the team with the Eviolate Luxio, a little budget Intimidate, and I don't know if the Riolu was originally there, but it certainly has a lot more to do now with in terms of like weather and even just like how support and weakness policy procs. So yeah, I like the changes.
Well, yeah, I think so if it wasn't clear from what Miss Mag just said, the Porygons picked up Ndidi and Armarouge when they became a new coach, and so that just made the power level on their team go up exponentially. That's an incredibly powerful combo. It's very annoying, and certain teams really just can't deal with it at all because, if you don't have a dark Pokemon, you basically are forced to use your Terra in order to deal with it, and then Armor Cannon, Dazzling Gleam just also can hurt that quite a bit. And then in addition, like you said, the Fletchender, even though it's not the most powerful Pokemon generically speaking, they have a very good speed tier to be kind of that awkward speed where they either can be really good in Trick Room or really good out of Trick Room with Tailwind, and you kind of have to respect both of them in prep. And so I definitely think that, even though they're a little bit lower in differential than the other two teams, they're definitely on the upswing, especially as they catch their feet, because I think they ended up having to do 3 weeks of matches in 1 week, basically. Um, and so to catch up, and, so definitely excited to see what they do in the second half. Any other thoughts before we move on?
Nah, like you, I'm also excited to see what they do in the second half. They did have a lot of backlog games to pick up on, and they were not against easy coaches either. They were against coaches who were at the time on the upswing in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Uh,
let's go.
So with that, we can move on to number 18, which is the Cresting Chevaliers at 1-3 -2. So what are your thoughts on the Chevaliers?
It sucks to see a Miss Maggie's team this low in the power rankings. But I will say though, I think the team overall is good, and judging by the fact that it probably has the best differential of all the 1-3 teams, tells me that it had a lot of close matches. Being, that I myself am familiar with that whole like losing record but very high differential kind of like experience in certain leagues. So it's like a lot of times I think it's play that might cause that, not so much the team. And I think this might be one of those cases because I definitely seen how Sam has piloted this team. I think he's comfortable with it. I think he just needs to work on optimizing his play, um, using some of these mods, maybe even break into some different kind of play styles with what tools they have. But other than that, I still like this team about as much as I did during week zero, but I've had to knock it down a few pegs because of the record.
So, well, yeah, so that's fair. So I do have a question. So they are the highest 1-3 -2 team. However, they are not the highest, so by the differential, but they aren't the highest by ranking. There are two teams at 1-3 that are higher ranking than that. In addition to that, they were our week six, uh, or rank 6 week 0 team. So they're very high on our week 0 team. They haven't made any changes, and they are the highest differential in 1-3 teams. So, what are your thoughts of why they aren't higher in our among our 1-3s?
I think it's still. I think it comes down to again mostly that if you start high, unfortunately, you don't really have too much room to go other than down. So I think him falling from 6th to 18th over the course of this time in evals is also carried a bit by the fact that well, if this team was as good as we said it was, why is it 1-3 minus 2? If I had to really seriously pick apart this team in terms of mons that I might change, I mean, I don't love Gold Duck on this team, only because I think Vaporeon is just a generally better water type for the role. And this is another team where I don't really understand Glalie other than just being a good D tier pick. Um, I actually think the Paradox mons are probably some of my most favorite parts of the team. I think Roaring Moon and um, crap, what's this one called? I forget. Screamtail, Screamtail. There we go. I think they complement each other nicely on base typing in a lot of ways. So that's always good. I think I'm not biased at all when I say that Mismagius is a pretty alright Pokemon, even for its tier. Getting that nice little bit of levitate and strong special attack offense is pretty good. He's got the Toad School for the Trick Room setup and the redirection. This team has all the tools. I just think it's play and maybe needing a few refined picks, but this team could do so many things on its face.
Um, well, yeah, I think the team's great. Like I said, they were week 6 or week 0, 6th overall in our original power rankings. I think the team is very powerful. So one of the big reasons I didn't rank them as high as some of the other 1-3 teams, despite having higher differential, is that they had two of the teams that they've played thus far are teams below them currently on the power ranking, and they are currently 1-3 despite that. Um, so definitely a little bit. I think that's part of it. They had a couple of, and I'm not gonna don't want to say give me wins, but they had teams that are lower on the rankings, and so if they are unable to beat those teams, obviously the assumption is they shouldn't be higher on the rankings because of that. I think that's kind of the big thing. Obviously, other than that, there's another team above them that's 1-3 that was higher ranked at our week 0, and I'll mention it a little bit later when we get to that team. But I definitely think as we said in our original, I did like their team originally. I still like a large amount of their teams. They have some of the better D tier Pokemon. They have some very annoying or powerful Pokemon, and they kind of have all the stuff you kind of want in a team. But with that, we can get up to number 17, which is the MK Mimikyus, who are 1-3 minus 3. So what are your thoughts on them?
Well, my first thought is this team has done a lot of trades since our first PRs. I think
Yes.
they're on basically their last trade. I believe they
So,
made
yeah.
3 trades.
Yes, they've made 3
Um,
trades.
yeah. So I okay. I would have to actually review what they've traded, but I could be going off of memory. I believe Zorak was on this team during week 0.
I think so.
If I yeah, I thought Zorak was with the King Gambit and this stuff. I could be wrong. I would have actually. Hold on, I'm gonna look up their trades in Discord. I'm really curious now. Um, let's see, because I remember approving all of these trades myself. Actually,
Uh,
yes, they had Zorak. They got Darkspawn. They had Azumarill, and they picked up Palafin. I do remember that. And then they had Lurantis, and they picked up Fungus. All right, so I'll speak on the things I really like the addition of um I love the addition of Fungus to this team. I think even the cheap redirection mode is very useful for some of these larger threats. Even just getting off Trick Room with Gengar or Nguru, or even just setting up a free Tailwind. Um, getting some boosting off with King Gambit or with Past Off Great Tusk is nice. And then with the remaining trades, he kind of split Azumarill into a water and a fairy type solitary that are both physical mons. So I thought that was a very interesting choice. Kind of keeping the same thing other than like the obviously the secondary dark typing. But I like Palafin on this particular team. I think there's a lot of supportive pieces for Palafin. Like it can be really oppressive if it's allowed to like transform and get off a lot of damage, and it's very bulky. And then you have like things like Oranguru next to it that can do instructs. You have Salt Stack, which has like helping hand. Fungus has pollen puff, so you know I do like these pieces, but at the same time, then there's like the Crocolore. I'm not like super convinced by. I actively think Squawkability is just a horrible Pokemon. Sorry, not sorry. Just really, really not good Pokemon. And then this is another team with like Doxbun is like kind of just like why is this specifically here other than it being like a C tier or fairy type in some ways. And the Aroma Veil argument doesn't quite work as well here because of Oranguru commonly carrying Mental Herb. But that's just my thoughts. What about you?
So yeah, I think that their trades are great. I think they had way too many Trick Room Pokemon in the Atlantis and the Azumarill on top of the King Gambit and their baby Stalt stack, whatever it's called. I don't care. I think they had way too many Pokemon focused on Trick Room in their original team. These new Pokemon helped diversify a little bit more on the speed tier, helped get some priority moves with like the Jet Punch, helped get some pivoting potential, especially with thing, which I think is fairly useful. Especially like I said, the trick room mode, King Gambit by itself makes any trick room mode great. Uh, and so I definitely think that those changes help the team overall. The other big one, kind of that I mentioned a little bit, and the other one is this team has exclusively played teams that we ranked in the top half. Um, and so, despite them being 1-3, they're 1-3 against teams that have basically, been winning almost every one of their matches. And so they, for reference, spoiler alert, they've played the second and third ranked team in the thus far, and had good matches against them, in which they were really close. And so that's one of the big reasons why I think they're higher in the 1-3s, despite not having the highest differential, because they played very good coaches and coaches that have been doing very well this season.
Yeah,
Um,
I can agree with that. At this point in the season, we are taking coach skill, strength of schedule, all of those little factors into account because we have the data to support it. So, kind of conversely to the discussion on the Silvalies, if you lose to teams that are not doing as well, it is a bit punishing from the evaluator's perspective versus like losing against really high ranking teams like the Mimikyus. It keeps you a little bit more honest in terms of where you fall.
and then on top of that, another thing that's looking optimistic for the Mimikyu is the every game the rest of their schedule are teams that we've already mentioned in the power rankings. So they have I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to say an easy end schedule, but a, they definitely have a lot more manageable of a second half. And so I definitely can see them making a run for it because, like I said, they put very hard matches into two of the top three teams in the league. And in addition to that, you know, are in a reasonable spot, especially with some changes to their team. So anything else before we move on?
No, I'm just really curious to see how far, as you say, they'll take it in the second half of the season because this really does look like a scarier team now with those trades. And I think one of my favorite parts about this team that thankfully has gone unchanged is that great Tusk Kilowattrel pairing, which I think is probably one of the scariest Disquakes I've ever seen.
Oh yeah, definitely. But with that, we can get up to our last 1-3 team, the Quirk Drivers. I'll start off with this one. So Quirk Drivers were in our number two team in our original power rankings, and so we really liked their team originally. And as we can see, they have some very powerful Pokemon like the Meowscarada, the Electric Terrain plus the Iron Hands. Intimidate, a very good Trick Room mode, really good Tailwind mode. So definitely, I think that's some of the reasons why they're the highest 1-3 team. They are -3, so they're not the highest, but they're fairly good on differential compared to the other 1-3 teams. Um, And overall, in addition to that, I think they have also had a fairly tough original week schedule. However, we shall see. I'm actually playing them this week, and so hopefully I can make that into a 1-4, and maybe they won't deserve as high the power rankings. So, any thoughts on the
Wow.
team?
Well, we'll have to see. Maybe we should do a week 5 power rankings just to see if you were right. But I will say that, yes, I was definitely one of the people that was mostly high on this team in week 0. And yes, they did take a bit of a tumble in my eyes because of record. But at the same time, we do acknowledge that they did play some pretty difficult matches. And they've actually made one trade that I do not think is reflected here because it was made, I think it was made after we got this going. Hold on. Let me see. I know for sure they made, because they do not have Mousehold anymore. Yeah, they have oh wait, no, sorry.
Oh
No.
yes, yes. They don't have Mousehold. They have
Yeah, they don't have
Iron
Mousehold. They have Iron
or
Moth now.
Moth. Yes.
Yeah. So without the Mousehold, um I mean, honestly, it doesn't really change all that much for me in terms of like their overall team comp. I think Mousehold's a great Pokemon, but I know in particular Zam has been very invested in his futuristic mode. And I actually kind of like the Iron Moth a little bit better because one of the things that I do remember saying was a weakness of this team during that time was lack of very strong special attackers. I think literally other than like Rabska and Florges, I think that all the other real, I put real in quotation marks, special attacking mod was like Noivern. And I guess like Drifblim. So I kind of like the Iron Moth as like an option for that. I also like the fact that he's actually adding a good fire type to his team. Uh, it has quad ground weakness, but like he's got quite a few immunities to that. Because overall, I think his team comp is solid. Like those speed tiers look very clean. The different modes, Iron Hands is just broken. Um, the Trick Room mode in particular is also very strong, even if it is a lot of like physical offense in that mode. Iron Hands is really broken. Did I mention Iron Hands is really broken? So I think this team's definitely got potential to close out the season and possibly get playoffs.
Uh, that's fair. Definitely could see it. I will say one thing. I think the team is very powerful. But as somebody who's prepping for the team, I will say that I was very happy that they got rid of the Mousehold. It definitely made my prep a lot easier. I don't know if that's just my team against in general, or if it's just or if it's a thought. But I will say that that definitely made me feel better about the matchup. Um, because they traded it right before we went through. But anyways, with that, we can get up to number 15, which is the Celadon Stuffles, right?
Yep, Celadon Stuffles.
um, so I guess you can start. What are your thoughts on them? These are our lowest 2-2 team. They're at 2-2 plus 0.
Honestly, I think this team is aptly put at its rank. I think it is an alright team. I do like certain parts of this comp, as I did in week 0. Particularly, I like that the combination of those fast mode pieces with the Iron Bundle. I really think the Tauros forms in general this gen are really cool Pokemon. So I do like that. I also like the Bronzong. I'm also a huge Brute Bonnet fan. Not gonna lie. So I like those pieces. And of course, Mini Goth is really great. You got your little Perish Trap um, thing going on there. But my original critique of this team kind of still remains. I don't really love those D tier mons in the slightest. I get Pikachu kind of being on this team for like cheap fake out, and like Lightning Rod is kind of cool. I don't know what form of Tauros they have. I'm gonna assume it's the regular one. I don't think it's Aqua or Blaze.
I believe
So I
it's
think
regular,
it's
yeah.
yeah, I think it's just the plain fighting one. So yeah, so you really only redirecting the electric attacks away from the bundle and the Pelipper, which I feel like you can kind of better do that without necessarily having to commit a whole lightning rod to it, since there isn't like a real formal rain mode to this team with like a Swift Swimmer. And I just think Squirtle's not great. Like it's cool that it has like Prankster and it's all the way at the bottom tier with like Unburdened and stuff, but like yeah, I just don't think it's great. Yeah. What are your thoughts?
So I think the big thing I will say is I think they are. This was our lowest week zero ranked team that is currently 2-2 or two wins or better. Um, and so that's definitely actually well that is at two wins specifically. And so that's definitely I think a big aspect of it. They haven't made any trades, so that's kind of the general idea. Other than that, um, they they've had they've had definitely I think one of the big things with them is that they've definitely done very well at defeating teams have been that are currently lower ranked than them. So they were able to beat all the teams that have less than two wins, and they've lost every team that have more than two wins. So it definitely seems like they are performing pretty well as like a 2-2 team. I think there's a good chance that they'll probably end around 4-4 plus zero, and that's kind of seems like where they're going to be at, and right around the maybe a little bit higher than this, but I'd guess right around like like the 12th to 14th rank. So I think it's definitely a good estimator of their position. They've seemed like they are. I think our original week zero power rankings put them, I think, almost exactly the spot. Yeah, I think we had them at 16. So I think this is kind of where they are. I think they're gonna, I think they are based on their team and how they've been playing. They play very well. Their team has some flaws, and so the very good teams can, I think, defeat those flaws, and the bad, like the teams that have some flaws in themselves struggle, and thus, you know, I think they're gonna be around 4-4. 4-4 minus one is my final guess.
I mean, I think consistency is good. So I think the fact that they have stayed around the same mark from week zero to mid-season is good in terms of consistency, like
Oh
you
yeah,
said, with player coachability. And I think it just opens the door for them to potentially maybe make some trades or some improvements to how they use the team to push themselves into a bigger run,
oh yeah.
going towards the end of the regular season.
Yeah, but I definitely agree with that. I think that's kind of the point I was trying to make is yes, I think that their team is very good, very solid, and I think they have a good chance to continuously do well against a fair most teams. And then, but yes, I think if they make one or two trades, specifically like we said, Wigglytuff, Pikachu, Strudel, those three are the big ones. I'm questionable about. Um, I think they could, definitely improve the team a little bit and maybe, make that 4-4 minus one. I'm guessing up to, who knows. Any other thoughts before we move on?
No, I'm just curious to see what they'll do going forward. Really.
So with that, we have another 2-2 team at 2-2 minus one, the South Croydon SARS. So what are your thoughts on this team?
My first thought is, damn, Grizzle, you broke the having all type because you got rid of Rever Room. It was so cool. This was the only team, I believe, in the league that had all 18 types represented, even if two of them were on NFEs. That being said, I actually think Slithering is a very cool addition to this team because this team did not have like any Paradox Mons, and it just kind of opens another avenue for um, this team to kind of go a little crazy doing that. It's another Indeedee Armorers team, and Indeedee Armorers, when we were talking during the Pogging Porygons portion of the set, is still a strong pairing. He's also got the little sand mode there with the Hippo and the Cacturn. Sandville's a real thing. Don't sleep. I still like this team. I think this is also about where I would probably expect to put it. I know we were a little bit higher on it at first. I think they were like maybe like ranked 10 or 9 in week zero. You
Yeah,
can correct me if
they
I'm
were at
wrong.
10. You were correct.
They were at 10. Yeah, so I think when you factor in the progression during the season, the 2-2 record, like this is about where I would expect them to be. And I think the Slithering is an honest attempt at them kind of going into the second half of the season and just kind of being able to like pick up the gas a little bit. Their speed tiers are still very clean. They don't really have a trick room mode, and that's kind of always been, I believe, a critique of mine, even from week zero. So let's just see how far they can keep going.
Yeah, I think the big thing is it's hard like this team is good. It's hard to consider it a bad team with Armor Rouge, NDD plus one of the faster Tailwind setters with very good abusers of Tailwind, in addition to having the second fastest Pokemon in the game. All of these are incredibly powerful things. And so I definitely think that, this is why they're a little bit higher despite having a little bit lower differential than the other team. I definitely, in addition to that, I think that their trade was fine. Like, I think Slithering is probably a more powerful Pokemon than Revavroom, generically speaking. And I think, yeah, like, and so that's definitely like the idea. I don't have much else to say. Like, I like their team. I think they've been playing well. A lot of these two teams are really close, especially because you'll see later on we have a lot of teams that I really like at 2-2 right now. I'm not sure it's a if it's just inconsistency, or us overrating certain teams, but I do really like this team. But I also like many of the other teams in this 2-2 range. Any other thoughts before we move on?
That sounds good. I'll be curious to see how Crizzle does in the next couple of weeks.
Oh yeah. But with that, we go up to number 13, which is the Old English Ice Cubes, who are at 2-3 +0. And I'm going to start off with this one. I think they're overranked. Sorry, Gert. You're great. Great friend. Amazing. Um, one. So first of all, the Old English Ice Cubes we ranked really high in our week 0. They were number 3. So I think that's a big reason why we ranked them a little higher. I think the big thing they're at 2-3 +0. So they unlike the other ones, they do have one more losses than the other two coaches we just went to. Um, they made one trade from the original team, but they pretty much have the almost identical team that they started with. And so I definitely think this team is very powerful. Um, but I definitely think that going into week 4, or at the end of week 4, they were at 1-3, and they just won their week 5. And I think that they're a little bit on the upswing. If we caught them at the previous before they had their week 5 match, they would be at 2-2 -2, or I mean 1-3 -2, and we'd kind of put them a little bit lower. So I definitely think that I think we ranked them a little higher. I think we should have taken a little bit more for having the additional loss, but they are a great coach and a great team, and I've never not made playoffs. So maybe I'm wrong. uh, Anyways, what are your thoughts?
Well, the first thought is they actually made three trades that are very different than their original team. Um, I thought I was looking at it too, and I was trying to remember off the top of my head, but I had to go check the channel.
I thought
Yeah, it
the
cheated.
Venomoth trade was the only one they made. I thought.
Nope. Arcanine is new because Arcanine used to be a part of the Porygon team back when it was known as the Sharpedos. They used to have Rotom Heat for that, and the Quaquaval used to be a Slithering.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's there. I think this is still where this actually is where I rank. I rank them dead at 13 because I think that the team is a lot better than I liked it during week 0. Even if I'm not the biggest like Survivor fan, but having seen even a little bit behind the scenes of what Gert has like planned for it, I have to give it credit. It's a little bit better than I thought it was. So I get that was like I remember my biggest like critique of it in week 0 was I just didn't like Thriper. It's all right. But yeah, he basically replaced his Slithering with a I guess I want to say a slightly better fighting type as far as like typing, move pool, and even ability are concerned. He got Arcanine, which was a steal um, Frey, the coach of the Porygons, decided that he didn't want 4 fire types. And then Jolteon, I always think is so stupidly good for its tier. It did cost him the redirection, but I don't even think like with a lot of these other trades that he really like needs it. I think he really needed that fast tier at the base 130 speed a little bit more because his team looks pretty like debuff heavy, and then you have Grimmsnarl with the screens. Like this looks just like annoying to have to deal with now on a lot of different fronts.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I agree. I think their team is very powerful. Like I said, they might deserve this spot. They might deserve maybe even higher. But it's hard to say. Like I said, I think having like two three is definitely not the worst spot. They two more wins, they're very good position to be able to get to playoffs, especially with their current differential. So they definitely just need to get some wins. In addition, they have had a fairly tough first half of the season. Um, but so definitely curious to see how they end up doing. And Gert, I have confidence in you. I have no doubt that you're gonna be able to make playoffs. Just because you're gonna make playoffs, and just because your team's terrifying, doesn't mean that you should be super high in the power rankings. I have to say that right now, Gert. Sorry, don't yell at me.
Well, I'm sure he will leave a like, a comment, or subscribe, and make sure he knows you know how he feels. But I think on the merits, I think this team is pretty solid for where it's ranked. Like it respects the record of the coach, the skill of the coach, and acknowledges the new trades. So I think this team could very easily pull a 5-3 finish. And we'll see how it goes.
So with that, we can go up to our top half, number 12. We have the Atlantico de Malwile, the first 3-2 team. So what are your thoughts of their position? I guess the first one we can kind of just say that might help with this a little bit is on three. So they're one of the two teams that have 5 games played. That's a big thing. So every other team has 4 teams from now on. So, but yeah. So, anyways, what are your thoughts on the team?
I think this team is again aptly ranked. Like, and it's funny because the extra game played between the Ice Cubes and this team was literally them versus the Ice Cubes. So it's funny that they're kind of back to back in the power rankings because I think their teams are pretty nicely ranked. Like this is a fair mid ground. I stand by like my claims on the fact that the TR mode is not like the greatest, but at the same time, I'm starting to realize that at this point in the season that like the Scream and Tell is useful for this team for so many other things that I do appreciate it on this team a lot more than the fact that it's a really fast trick room setter. Um, that being said, I know we spoke about not liking Murkrow and Goldango during the rank 24 team. I actually really like Goldango on this kind of team. I don't even think it needs Murkrow. Why have Murkrow when you could just draft Iron Jugless, which is just better Murkrow? You know
Well,
what I mean?
like that's the thing is I think Iron Jugulis Goldango is a great combo. That's a combo I am 100% agree with. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like they made one trade. I feel like they had a Lycan. They had 2 Lycan rocks, if I recall, or maybe that was a different team. Um,
Let me
but
let me scan.
well,
I don't
while you're
think
doing
so.
that, I'll talk a little bit myself.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously they're the only 3-2 team because every other team only has played 4 games. Um, that I think hurt them a little bit compared to the teams above them. All the teams above them have 3-1 or better. Um, and so I definitely think their extra match where they ended up losing and Gert's extra match where they ended up winning both put them up to this. Fun fact: this is I think one of the only, if not the only team that is where they were originally ranked. They are 12th, and we ranked them 12th in their original rankings. So
Oh, well, look at that.
definitely cool. So did they end up making any trades?
Yeah, not a one.
Okay, so this was
No
their original
trades.
team. So they're right where we ranked them originally. They're and they have made no trades, so I guess it makes sense. So we're great at our jobs.
Let's go, us.
but
Go PR Council.
but basically, I actually really like almost everything on their team. Like, there's no Pokemon on their team I dislike. Obviously, there's a couple Pokemon that maybe aren't the most powerful generically. I think the only Pokemon I don't super like is Zangoose, but like, I think their Paradox Mons are good. I think Goldango goes really well with Iron Jugulis. I think, I think they have just their top tiers are really powerful. They have a lot of very good utility Pokemon like Appleton and Muck in the lower tiers, and Frostmoth. Like all those are really good lower tier Pokemon. They have really bulky Pokemon. Um, yeah, like the team's very solid. They have a reasonable record. There's honestly not much to say about it. Like I said, like I think obviously if they didn't just get O2'd, like that in week 5, as we were right before we did our midway season rankings, they'd probably be a little, notably higher in this ranking. But with that, let's get up to number 11,
Sounds good to me. Don't sleep on Zangoose.
which is Rex and the Raging Warriors. So I will let it to you, but before I throw it to you, Rex and the Raging Warriors were 4th overall team in our week 0 power rankings. So, anyways, what are your thoughts on the team and their position currently?
I still like this team. I do remember that my biggest critique of it was Hypno, because I am not the biggest Hypno fan. But again, on this team, it works. I still think this team is frightening in terms of offensive output with Toxtricity, Dragapult, Annihilate, Scizor, the Eel, even Pyro and Donphan just like all spit out some offense. And Gold Duck can be surprisingly disruptive in all manner of ways and support this team very well as just giving it like a soft check to like weather modes. Like, this team has a lot of fast mons and slow mons, so it can kind of play pretty flexibly, but it doesn't have the greatest trick room setters outside of really Hypno. Um, just for bulk. Yeah, Meowscar I could set trick room, but like then you have Meowscar on your trick room. It's not necessarily always the easiest thing to do, especially not without any redirection. I do think that the two losses that this team took did hurt its position in the ranking a fair bit, but I don't think it was like something that's insurmountable. I actually think this team is fine for where it's at now. What are your thoughts?
Um, yeah, like I think the team is a very powerful team. For reference, I'm one of the teams they played and one of the teams they lost to. Their team is incredibly powerful, very versatile. They have, one of the faster Pokemon on the team. They have a lot of Pokemon that can have multiple different roles. Like they have Pokemon that are very powerful as offensive mons, but that can also be very supportive. Like Scizor can be choice band, technician bullet punch, or it can be Tailwind. Dragapult can be choice span, choice specs, huge damage. It can be a mixed attacker, or it can be double screens and light clay. And they have a lot of Pokemon like that, and I definitely think that's one of the strengths of their team. In addition to just having a lot of different, disruptive moves like multiple Pokemon with knockoff, they got fake out, multiple Pokemon with good priority moves. And so they have a lot going for them. I really like their team. Yeah, and I definitely, and, as we know, Rex is a great coach, being a former champion of the BDLS.
That we do. That we do.
So, any other thoughts before we move on?
Nah, I think Rex can turn it around for sure. I'll be curious to see how he finishes off the rest of the season.
Yeah. Oh wait, actually, I lied. We have a there are 2-2. I forgot. So we do have a 2-2 team above a 3-2 team. I forgot I forgot about that. My bad. Anyways, continuing on. We have the Oslo Berserkers, another 2-2 -1 team. So I definitely I misspoke earlier when I was saying about the 3-2. We have a couple 2-2 teams. So what are your thoughts on the Berserkers being up here at 2-2 as well in our top 10?
I think it's interesting that we have again this team, which is also coached by Colopsia. I believe he was the very first VDL champion. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, that is correct.
Yes, sir. Very first VDL champ. It's nice that we have these back-to-back champ teams here in the rankings because I also think their teams kind of play a little bit similarly. Rex's team, I think, on the whole, is a fair bit more naturally bulky, but then this one, the bulk of a lot of Colosseum's mons is augmented by dual screens and the Spupa Friend Guard, which is nice, as well as the Intimidate from the Tauros. I still like this team. I don't think they've made any trades either. I think Great Tusk and Rotom Heat are very nice. I think Fluttermane is very good in draft for what it can do. And then at the lower end of the spectrum, you have that, or sorry, the tier list, I should say. You have like the Appleton, which has been putting in a good deal of work for him, and I think he's really liked using the Appleton, especially with Terra. The Spupa, which I'll admit I underestimated probably during week 0. It's been quite nice in certain matches, and then the Impidip as well. I think it's a solid team. I do think he has some tough opponents. I do remember one of his losses um, being against I think a team that is ranked much higher on the list than this one, but I could be wrong about that.
Um, definitely, at least one of his opponents, one of his losses has been to a team higher than this. But yeah, I guess I'll go to mine. Their two Paradox Mons are arguably like two of the three best Paradox Mon, generically speaking. They're both really huge damage output, really annoying to deal with. Great stab combinations offensively because there's not much that resists both of their stabs of either of them. And then in addition, they have intimidate, good priority, good disruption, good way to like do status conditions. Very powerful team, great coach. Definitely like their things. Fun fact: they of their 4 games, they are undefeated when they bring Spoopa, and they have yet to win when they haven't brought Spoopa. So just saying, Galopsia, you need to bring Spoopa more.
I'm telling you, man, the Spoop is undefeated, honestly, and I've even
uh,
read about it in other draft circles regarding this little cocoon friend guard mon down here. It's a hidden gem, so well played on picking that one up, Kalopsia. But I think he can finish off the season strong. I still think this team has a lot of very good, balanced offensive pieces and defensive pieces as well. It's just gonna be about, well, I guess bringing Spupa to every other game for the rest of the season.
yeah, yeah, but they definitely do not have an easy path for the second half of the season. So we shall see how it goes. But with that, I think that might be our highest 2-2 team. Hopefully, I'm not wrong a second time, but we shall see. Let's go. Going up to number 9, we have the last 2-2 team. I lied. This is actually the
Yeah.
okay. So this one's pretty straightforward. So this is the Cambridge Camera Ups. Cambridge Camera Ups were our week 0 number 1 team. The reason why you can do that, you can see this is a couple things. If you look at the base stat total on their team, it is absurd. They have 4 incredibly high base stat Pokemon. In addition to that, they have electric terrain, which boosts all 4 of those Pokemon's ability. So they do not need to use their item on booster energy. They don't have to fight over booster energy because they're able to do electric terrain and get actually have it. That's one of the downsides of the Paradox Mons is that they are very good base stat total. However, they either need to have a useless item or you need to use an item or use this ability or you need to use an item spot to use its ability. With the Pincurchin, that you don't have that. In addition to that, they have some very good Pokemon pairing with it. So what are your thoughts on their ranking?
I think when you factor in the fact that they went from 1 to 9th on the back of only 2 losses, it's actually not the worst drop in terms of like PRs. Like they're still in the top 10, and the tools at their disposal and the sheer amount of like stats at Squirrely's disposal is tantamount. It's still a very nice, well balanced team. I do believe that one of the biggest things that people have been able to kind of exploit about this team is some of the mons have some relative frailness. Like his 2 fastest mons are fairly frail in their regard. So if you can kind of outlive a lot of their hits, excuse me, they won't give you too much trouble. The other thing is also for the few coaches who actually also have Paradox Mons that can benefit from electric terrain. I specifically remember he lost to a team that is higher up in the rankings that had Iron Hands. Iron Hands kind of worked him over pretty well because it was well supported by other members of the team on that coach's draft. So I think those kind of things help coupled for why he fell down in the rankings. But I still think this team is very strong.
Yeah. Well, another thing to mention on top of the team being very powerful, um, they have played so 3 of the 4 coaches they played this season are currently higher than them on the power rankings, which says a lot because they are currently 9. So that means 3 of their 4 first matches are top 8 teams or better, which is
It's
very
crazy.
powerful. Um, on the slightly sad side, they still have 2 teams above them remaining. So their schedule is just oh my. But
It's a lot.
but
It's It's
I
really a lot.
Yeah, so that means they're gonna end up having to play 5 or 6 teams in the top 8 as of now. Obviously, those teams might just power rankings, but I definitely have confidence in them. Cam Rupp's incredibly powerful coach. They've done a lot of work. I think they were our secret or VDL like mystery or champion draft thing. Champion, I forgot the name of it.
Yeah, they were the I think it was the Victory All Star or
Yes, the
something
All Star.
champion.
Yeah, they were All Star champion. So we know they're a great coach. They have an amazing team. I have no doubt they're going to be able to, turn this around. I don't even know they need to turn it around per se, but you know, finish off the season strong, be able to get there to playoffs. But with that, we can get to our number 8, which is now I'm almost certain is going to go up to a 3-win team. Yes,
Hmm.
the Somerville Scissors at 3-1. What are your thoughts?
Well, I must say I've been impressed with how this coach has been piloting the team since their initial week zero power rankings. I know it was not super high on this team at all. And I will admit, I was wrong. It's not a bad team in the general sense, but I will also take the fact that they made three trades after their week one. So I think certain elements of the team are a lot better. The Beartick, Amogus, and Haunter, I believe, were not there when we did week zero power rankings, and I do like the addition to the team with those three in particular.
Yeah, So originally they had Toad School, Colossal, Ingredient, which I think were all actively bad on their team. So I agree. They definitely made some notable big improvements to the team. For reference, they were originally our 21st ranked team, um, which obviously they are doing a lot better than that. And I think obviously part of that is because they're trades, but they've also been playing quite well. Some of their cores I think were a little bit better, but since they've made the trades, they have been undefeated. So maybe it was just the trades. But
I
like,
mean, maybe.
but yeah, but obviously, I do think they have some good Pokemon. Like I think Iron Jugular is, King Gambit are really good. I think Belly Bolt is wildly undervalued by peoples, and then obviously Amoonguss could be very powerful. So definitely, I think some good things. Like I said, they made some trades, which I think helped improve their team. And starting off at 21st in the week 0 up to number 8 is definitely an impressive jump. But also starting off the season 3-1 plus 3 is really good, especially after starting off with an 0-2 loss, which is definitely hard to come back from sometimes.
Hmm. For sure.
So any other thoughts before we move on?
Nah, I'll be curious to see how well Night Owl and the Scissors can keep this trajectory going because I actually really like the trades they made.
Yeah.
I think it made their team overall a lot more difficult to deal with.
Oh yeah, definitely agree. Like they got rid of they pretty much had what I would describe as 3 completely useless Pokemon, and they just added 3 actively good Pokemon. So,
Hmm.
it's like they had Toad School and on the same team that they had Amoonguss, which no. Anyways, continuing on. Number 7, we have the Tentacle Pirates at 3-1 plus 4. So pretty high on their differential and their 3-1. So what are your thoughts on this team and its position?
This team has been making Volcarona do work. That is my main thought. This team is so cracked with their Volcarona. I believe it got like 5 kills in 1 week, and Iron Hand's just kind of there supporting things as
So
well.
so real quick, I'll
Um,
just tell you the Volcarona on other team is currently the kill leader. You can continue.
yeah, yeah, it's it makes a lot of sense. They did make 2 trades, which was not reflected here. They don't have Quillfish; they have Veluza instead, and they do not have the Oricorio Ghost form. They have Leafeon,
Okay.
which I think is funny because those were the 2 mons that the week zero PRs did hinge upon were a little bit, say, repetitive because you already have in my opinion, a better tailwind setter and more overall useful mon in Noivern, and you already have a much better intimidate mon in Stantler that actually can benefit from the Eviolite. So good on them for replacing those two mons. Other than that, I think the team is it's strong. It's strong. It's bulky, and it takes very full advantage of the fact that Grimmsnarl can set up screens and that Stantler can do intimidate buff and even or sorry intimidate debuff and even that Volcarona can do struggle bug stuff. So
Oh
this
yeah.
is aptly where I would put it for sure.
Oh yeah, no, their team's such a good Grim Snarl team. Like those that screen puts so much work. Fake out pressure does so much work. Volcarona being able to like redirection with like sword stands, iron hands or Telwyn. Their team got so many scary packages, especially with those trades that you mentioned that aren't represented. Because like obviously like we mentioned I think we had them like middle in our original power rankings. Yeah, they were like at
Hmm.
16. And with those
Yeah.
trades, they definitely team is a little bit better. But like their team has
Hmm.
some very scary cores, some very scary Pokemon. And definitely some nice like the other things like I definitely think they have some nice switch ins for pretty much every Pokemon on their team as well, which is definitely nice. And their only loss is currently to one of the undefeated teams as well. So I think that's also a nice bonus to kind of just show you how good they've been doing because they've been able to kind of beat every team that's currently not undefeated.
Yeah, that's fair. I can agree with that completely.
um, but with that, I guess we can move up to number 6, which is Rebellion. I'll start off. So Rebellion was our 23rd ranked team starting of the thing. They have since made 3 trades, I believe. And I definitely think the trades have improved their team quite a bit. They got rid of, I believe they got rid of some of their more bulky stall Pokemon, and I think it was like Blissey and Garganackle for
Well,
Sand mode.
they used all four of their
Oh,
trades.
all four.
Like
I thought they only used 3.
literally at the same time. Yeah, all four of their trades.
Okay, so yeah, so they got rid of. Oh yes, they got rid of some 2 of their really bulky Pokemon. And they also got rid of their slacking combo as well. Um, and so that was kind of the idea. And so they got rid. So definitely like.
Well, no, they actually got rid of the slacking during free
Oh wait,
agency.
no, let's
Yeah,
see where.
they got
There we
rid
go.
of
Yeah,
yeah no they
Garganackle, Blissey. I was right
mm-hmm.
for the sand mode, and they got rid of Cyclizar, Alomola for Quackaball, and Dugtrio. There you go. I looked it up. All right. So the biggest complaint and why they're 23rd is they had too many Pokemon that were super bulky whose only goal was to stall out the game. And Garganackle, Blissey, and and Toxapeck. That we thought was too inconsistent to be and not the best, and they had too many things. They got rid of a couple of them, added a very good offensive mode, which I think is very helpful. In addition, they added some speed and damage, which is very good. So like all of that. In addition, obviously, Rebellion's a very powerful coach. They are a regular person VDL that has been very well. And in addition to that, I also predicted them making playoffs back at week 0, and my prediction is looking good right now. But yes, I think even though we didn't see too much of their old team, I think their trades definitely have improved their team dramatically, and I definitely think their team should be able to do well and probably be able to easily make playoffs if they continue, prepping and playing well. So what are your thoughts on the team and the trades?
I pretty much completely agree with you. I think these trades made this team a lot scarier. That sand mode and now double trapping because Dugtrio also has arena trap. Granted, it's a little bit weaker than Shadow Tag if you fly, but just the potential to kind of have both is nice because Dugtrio is frailer than Gothitelle but more offensive, and vice versa. But yeah, no, this team is a lot better than it used to be. I think the only real weak point I would say this team does have now, and it's really not even like that big of a weak point, is that most of the offensive pressure leans very physical. So take do with that what you may, but the fact that like he has, I would say, 4 very viable special attacking mons that can actually do pretty decent damage. So you can't really sleep on them either.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely like the team. In addition, they have really good support Pokemon with the that also can threaten pretty well offensively. So it's like very, very, very. The team has improved dramatically with their trades. In addition, like their team wasn't bad originally. It was just there was too much overlap. And I think that was the big issue with the team is that they kind of had 3 or 4 Pokemon that just did this filled the same role. Now most Pokemon on the team, if not every Pokemon on the team, is unique and does their own thing, which makes the team
Mm-hmm.
very scary. So now you have to deal with everything. And so I originally picked them to be a wild card team. I might have to change that. I might with these change. I might have to say I'm expecting them to make it as a first or second seed. But we shall
Yeah,
see.
I mean, honestly though, I'll be the first one to say that with this new team, listen, if we could give him a fifth trade just to get rid of Vespiquen for something a little bit more useful, I would easily call this like a first seed team.
Yeah,
And I don't even remember what division he's in. I'm saying that pretty confidently. But at the same time, I like, he's out of trade, so he can't get rid of Vespiquen. But I'm sure he can find a use for it on this team, you know.
yeah.
But that's like the one stain on the new plot armor coming off of Lucian Flash.
So with that, we can come up to our top five. At number five, we have the Somerville Scraggies. Yeah, Tyler doing pretty well here. What are your thoughts on them being at number five?
Fisheye with Eviolite is broken and should have not ever been allowed in the game whatsoever. That's my thought, and that's my TED talk and discussion. Nah, in all seriousness, um, I love you, Tyler, but I still hate your team speed tiers. But I respect how bulky your team is that much, and how offensive pressure off of that slow bulkiness is very disconcerting to deal with. But that Bisharp is that Bisharp's just ridiculous. It's just living hits that it really has no business living, and couple that with like some really good supportive pieces and like Arboliva and Florges with Pollen Puff, Slowbro with Heal Pulse, like this team just wants to sit in front of you all day and just take pot shots at you until you kind of pass out. And I like that kind of style of play because I feel like it allows Tyler to control the flow of the game in a way that is not so heavily dependent on not just how much damage he can dish out, but how much he can outlast his opponents.
Yeah, I I really like their team. Team reminds me very much of a team I had in another league, in which I really liked, with just a lot of really good bulky Pokemon, really good offense, and a very powerful Trick Room mode that you can use but you don't need to use. And in addition to that, they have played against many good teams, done really well. Their only loss this season is to a team that is currently ranked number one overall, and so definitely a really big, uh, you know, not a terrible loss to lose to somebody that high on the list. They had a little bit rocky week one, and then since then they've just shown the strength of their team, gotten into their team. They've used I think almost every single Pokemon on their team too, and like they've definitely just been doing really well. Yeah, no, I really like the team. Tyler's been playing well, and yeah, they've definitely learned how to use the team well. Any other thoughts before we move on?
Nah, I think that's plenty, honestly. I can't wait to see how he finishes the season. I easily think this is a playoff contending team. Like he's right there.
Yeah, definitely. And with that, we have our final 3-win team. Myself at 3-1 plus 5. So I'm the highest differential of all the three-win teams. I think that's probably one of the big reasons I'm the top. However, I've made many trades in from week 4 into week 5. So we shall see how this goes. I added Slacking. Uh, I added Metacham, and I added uh, Mischievous all onto my team recently. So, what are your thoughts on my trade, my season so far, and my position right now?
I think so. I'll start off with your season so far has been really good. I believe your only loss was to the Porygons
Yes.
so far, who as a replacement coach, also has a pretty strong team down there. Getting into the vibes with that. So like yeah, you have your one loss, but your team is still strong. Your comp is honestly crazy. Like your team is literally speed, man. Like you have 5 Mons with 3-digit base speed total. I do not think any other team has maybe more than 3, but you have 5. And like right under that knight is base 95 with what's that Hound? I was going to say Houndstone, Hound Doom. While you also have a pretty passable like Trick Room little mode because Hariyama is a beast under Trick Room, and that in and of itself can seriously carry a team. Um, in the same in similar ways that Iron's Hands would. As far as your trades, I'm a big Gen 3 guy because that's the gen I started with. So I'm very much fond of Medicham and Slacking. And of course, I can't really be biased against Mischievous and any member of that family. I do think that the Slacking Medicham mode gives your team some immediate offensive pressure in a way that people are going to have to be forced to respect in prep. Even just slacking with a choice band is going to be like blowing holes through stuff, like even if it's only attacking like every other turn. So I really like the adjustments in a big way.
Yeah, I think my team originally was ranked um, kind of around the mid. I think a little bit below mid. I think I ended up being at 15, and I think the big reason behind that is there was a couple Pokemon on my team that I feel like were kind of useless, if not completely useless. And I think the trades helped with that a little bit. I now don't see any Pokemon on my team I don't like. Obviously there's some Pokemon better than others, as any team, but now I actively like every Pokemon on my team. I can see reason to bring every Pokemon on my team. So I'm excited about that. I don't know if my team's better per se because I did lose a pretty powerful Pokemon in Breloom, but I have been liking, some like the look of the new team in the general sense. And I definitely, I think if we did week 3 power rankings, I probably would have been in the top 2. So it doesn't surprise me too much that I'm at, near the top of the ranking still, just because I had a one loss in week 4. It was a very close loss. Um, that arguably came down to a flinch. So definitely a close thing, and on top of being the highest differential. But I'm excited to see how my trades work out, and I'm excited to use some of these new Pokemon. But so far, I've been liking my team. But with that, we can get up to the top 3, unless you have anything else you want to say.
No, I think that's good. I definitely think you have a great shot at making playoffs as well, especially with seeing some of these new mons in action. So yeah, can't wait.
Continue on. We are at number 3 with Matrix and the Welsh Wailords at 4-0 plus 6. So for the last 3 teams, they're all undefeated. Matrix is currently is at the lowest. So what are your thoughts of why they are at the lowest instead of second or first?
I think the biggest difference between this team and the rank 2 team, because I did put this team at number 3. I think the difference is this team has a lot of really strong synergies and pieces, but the amount of setup you kind of need to get some of them in place is a lot more compared to the team I believe that is ranked number 2, which might have better mons that are like standalone. And I think that just means like Roaring Moon, kind of has to be put in is a very good offensive piece. Give it the booster energy, it starts going ham. Same with like Sandy Shocks. But like pieces like Scoville need a little bit of time to set up with the Moody. Gyarados needs to kind of be put into pretty favorable positions, I would say, and even um, Glamora and Houndstone as well. That being said, I love what he's done with the team. It looks like on its face like just a mishmash of stuff, but this man's been piloting this team like a pro. Like in particular, that his Glamora usage has really been impressive over the course of this season, and I like the fact that he's kind of giving everything on his team a little bit of a chance to shine. I think we've seen most of these ones hit the field, or at least hit the preview. I think maybe the Piggy might be the only one we haven't seen.
I
Um,
believe that's correct.
yeah, so I like a lot of the diversity in terms of there's no dead picks here, and I'm pretty sure he'll find a match where I forget what the pig's name is, but where the pig
Oinkalon.
oh Winkleon, yeah, that's cute. But I find he'll find a match where that's useful, and I think some of the strongest draft teams are where like there are no real dead slots. Like even your quote unquote budget picks are good.
Well, I've done a lot of prep with Matrix. I know their team very well. I know their playstyle really well, and I will tell you that their team is a hoshposh of different Pokemon. That is a correct assessment, and because that is exactly that was their concern with their team as they drafted it. However, I think the big thing, which kind of is unsurprising, is all the Pokemon are individually very powerful. There are no Pokemon on the team that you look at and say, this Pokemon's not a good Pokemon. Um, so obviously they have some synergies. Some of them are not as obvious as other. They have like Sand and Sun with Klefki. They have things like the ability to set up Tailwind, fast speed to hit some of these mid-speed tier Pokemon. They have the screens for some of their medium to bulky Pokemon that could be really useful. But I think the big thing is just he has 11 Pokemon that are all good value for their tiers, all have fairly reasonable versatility, and Matrix is able to play them incredibly well. That's kind of the long and short of it. So like I think it's a big thing of saying like you don't need to have really bold in your face synergies to do well. You just need to have good Pokemon and play well, and you can easily go 4-0 like we see here.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that in a lot of ways.
And I also think one of the reasons why they're a little bit lower is on top of. I think the number one was very clear. I think we all agreed on it. I think the question was between 2 and 3, and I think part of it is kind of just Matrix was one of the people who ranked this team, and they ranked themselves a little bit lower. And on top of that, going up to number 2, we have the Trixie Tricos, who, for reference, is coach is Otto, who is a two-time champion of the VDL and considered by many to be one of the better, if not the best coach in the VDL. So
Hmm.
it is hard to put them too low when they're undefeated and going on a tear as well. So, what are your thoughts on the Trixie Tricos being number 2?
Yeah, it kind of goes to my point, like just like Volcarona and Dragonite are just, and even Magnezone are just such really obnoxious standalone mons that don't need, I think, but so much inherent support. And it's like just like a very small difference. It doesn't even mean that the teams are bad, because I actually think their teams are pretty similar, down to like even some of their speed tiers. Although I didn't realize Auto has such a fast team. So you have a rival for how many base 100 speed mons that you have. Their
Uh,
whole Fire Warded Grass core is actually base 100, which is kind of cool.
they don't have 150.
Oh well, excuse me. They don't have 150. Um, but I really like this team. I think it's similar to Matrix's team in the fact that there's just a lot of tools and utility at this disposal. Um, Even something as simple as just like Shell Smash Dreadnought, which you have to respect with two potential redirection mons. Um, which I actually thought was going to be a little bit more problematic at first, but they cover each other very nicely.
Yeah. Uh, like I think these two are both incredibly close. Um, I honestly I don't think I would have an argument either way. Which one's better? Which one's worse? Um, they've been playing pretty much equally as well, which has been amazingly. Their teams are both kind of like you said to a certain extent very similar to a certain extent, which they aren't incredibly like in your face synergy driven. They have all incredibly powerful Pokemon, and they just honestly just been having good Pokemon playing well, and being able to get being able to get wins consistently. I yeah, like I personally think I'd put Matrix once above this team. They have a little bit better differential, and I think they've had a little bit harder strength of schedule thus far.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, this is nitpicking at this point. They are so close, and they just need to keep on doing what they're doing. You know, pretty much if they can get one more win, they're almost guaranteed to be playoffs. We've never had a 5-win team not make playoffs, so they're right
Right.
there. And so I'm excited to see the rest of the season and see them in playoffs. However, neither of them are number 1. we have a clear number one in which we all agreed on, which is the Shenandoah Sun Warriors, 4-0 plus 7, so the highest differential. So, what are your thoughts on the Sun Warriors and why are they unanimously number one?
So Tatsugiri Dondozo kind of busted in draft. Not gonna lie, just very very good. From prep to play to execution. But again, it wasn't even just that really got him the number one spot. It's how he supported the rest of the team. You know, Zorg with those kind of mons is already just disgusting. And then he had the Sandy Shocks and the Cerulege and even the Go Goat kind of do really well into a lot of the mons that want to typically, you know, kind of shut down the Dozo fun party. I also really like the trades he made. I like the Morgrim addition to the team, just some prankster screens and some prankster speed control just to make even not even just Dozo, but like Cerulege a little bit bulkier, Sandy Sock's a little bit bulkier. I think Scroodle for Gothita, even though I don't love Gothita, I think Gothita is a lot better for this kind of team comp, just the threat of any form of shadow tag when, you know, you want to be in better position versus Dozo than Dozo wants to be in better position versus you if you're opposing it. I think that's nice. And I think he picked up just a regular Paldean Tauros
Yeah.
for some nice intimidate pressure. Yeah, he's just built an all around solid squad. Like speed tiers are nice, accessibility to tools are nice. I think even his like offensive stats are balanced. There's a good amount of special attacking mons here, and there's a good amount of physical mons here. It's just a solid team. There's not really much else I can say, and he's been piloting it super well.
Yeah. Well, so I'll go with. So there's two obvious reasons why they're top. One, differential. They're the highest differential of all the 4-0 teams. Two, they were the highest week zero power rankings of all the teams that are currently undefeated as well. So those are two big reasons. But they've definitely shown a clinic on how well they can use Dondozo and Tatsuguri. They, I believe, in week four last week, or they're like this past week, they were able to use, Storm Drain Tatsuguri completely threw their opponent off guard and won them a game, by using that, just showing Tatsuguri by itself and Dondozo by itself, just as individual mons. They've been able to like basically use all their Pokemon very well, position themselves very well, and make it really hard for your opponent to deal with. And we kind of mentioned this maybe before, but just how much pressure it takes in prepping for the Dondozo and Tatsuguri lets other Pokemon on the team be able to go in and destroy. And they've definitely found the exact position of when you need to focus on that combo or focus on other Pokemon. And they've definitely been able to, use it, kind of navigate that perfectly almost every time.
Right. Yeah. No. Completely agree. And I've seen a little bit from what Chad has had to say, and he's really enjoying this team. And I think it says a lot when like you not only just enjoy the team you're playing, like you just really kind of get in the zone. And I think that's something to look forward to as he continues this Dozo agenda throughout the rest of the VDL season.
Yeah. With that, here are the final rankings. Um, so as we said at the beginning, these rankings are just our opinions, so don't feel too offended. In addition, um, you know, like I said, every single person uh, that is ranked in this position has the ability to make playoffs still. So don't keep fighting. Uh, yeah, keep fighting. My bad. Don't stop fighting. Keep going. Keep going.
Oops.
My bad. Yeah, keep going. You got this. You can still make it. Don't give up. Any final thoughts on any of the rankings or anything you want to say?
Just like you said, everybody can still make playoffs, so don't give up the fight. You guys have 4 more weeks to go, and I'll be cheering you guys on from down in the VDLS. So let's see some good matches.
And but so with that, thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and hopefully we'll come back with at least one more PR before the end of the season.